push Washington's vision for an inclusive Syrian-led transition. OPEC cut its 2024 global oil demand growth forecast for a fifth straight month, and by the largest amount yet, a series of downgrades that highlights China's sputtering role as the world's demand growth engine. A suicide bombing in the Afghan capital Kabul has killed the Taliban refugee minister. The explosion struck inside the ministry. Farmers from across the United Kingdom have brought their tractors to Westminster to protest the government's planned changes to inheritance tax for agricultural businesses. Elon Musk, whose wealth has been turbocharged since President-elect Donald Trump's win last month, has become the first person to reach $400 billion in net worth, the latest milestone for the world's richest individual. FIFA has officially announced Saudi Arabia as the host nation for the 2034 Men's Football World Cup. Saudi Arabia will become the second nation from the Middle East to host the mega football event. Well, our big focus, foreign powers are jockeying to shape post-war Syria as various factions seek to fill the power vacuum that's been left by Bashar al-Assad's overthrow. In fact, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Jordan and Turkey this week to push Washington's vision for what they call an inclusive Syrian-led transition. Meanwhile, Turkey moved to weaken Kurdish forces and expand their own influence in the country. Israel carried out nearly 500 airstrikes on Syria in 2 days and made ground incursions, prompting criticism from France and Germany. They said it would provide millions in humanitarian aid. But experts argue that each actor in Syria is scrambling to redraw the map, raising fears that the fall of the Assad regime will merely shepherd in another period of conflict. My colleague Trent Murray reports from the Israel-Syria border. Listen in.
Well, we are here at the Israel-Syria border, and as you can probably see behind me here, this is now an active military zone. That is, after the IDF was instructed by the Israeli government to move tanks, troops and artillery into the demilitarized zone, which has separated Israel and Syria since all the way back in 1974. That vast area there you can see behind me is looking into Syria. In the past, UN has been in there overseeing this DMZ, but they have now, for all intents and purposes, been relieved of duty, given that the IDF is pouring resources in to seize control of that DMZ. Now, the Israeli government says that they are doing this because they are concerned about their security, given the events of what has happened in Syria in recent days. Assad's troops were at one point up in that area guarding the other side of the demilitarized zone. But when his regime fell, well, those troops abandoned their post. And it was at that point that the Israelis decided to move in. It's also not just on the ground that we are monitoring. Up in the sky, the constant buzz of drones and even fighter jets. The Israelis have confirmed they have launched over 300 airstrikes across Syria in recent days. They are targeting the remnants of Assad's military, hitting army bases, air force bases, naval ports and weapons storage areas. Again, the justification of this is that they are concerned that extremists could get their hands on those weapons left behind by the former military and could pose a risk to the state of Israel. But the decision by the Israeli government is also attracting criticism. Regional players here, including Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt, all expressing concern that what is happening behind me is Israel effectively taking advantage of the power vacuum in Syria right now, taking advantage of that to try and seize this territory permanently for themselves. Trent Murray for NDTV at the Israel-Syria border.
Well, Syria has got a new regime which has multiple challenges lying ahead of them, from avoiding sanctions to internal security and threats from their neighbors. But will the new regime be able to overcome these challenges, or will it meet the same fate as Libya and Iraq? My colleague Mohammed Ghazali had a chat with Idris Ahmed. Listen in.
how do you see these entire development, where many theories are floating that the HTS chief, al-Golani, and he has got other names as well being quoted by the media, that he is backed by Israel because Israel is still occupying the land beyond Golan Heights, and yet there has been no response from the new regime. Do you buy this argument that he's being backed by US and Israel, just to dispel that rumor?
No, because I think that that's also kind of a completely, there's a lot of historical amnesia that is involved in that, because when the US intervened in Syria in 2014, it's worth remembering that the US did not intervene to support the opposition. Even when there was a chemical attack, even when the US had drawn a red line, it didn't enforce it. In 2013, Assad used chemical weapons and it got away with it. The US didn't intervene, but it did intervene as part of its so-called war on terror in August 2014 in Iraq, and then in Syria later on, a month later. And when it intervened, so it jointly bombed not just ISIS, but also the anti-Assad rebels, especially the forerunner to HTS, which was the Jabhat al-Nusra. So it was extensively bombed. In fact, one of the very tragic incidents in 2017 had happened when the US bombed a mosque in Aleppo and killed like several hundred people, because it assumed that this was a gathering. It claimed that this was in fact, its initial claim was that this was a gathering of Jabhat al-Nusra, and later on turned out that it was just people who had gathered for the evening prayers. So the thing is that Jabhat al-Nusra for all these years has been extensively bombed. Israel obviously is never going to trust them, because the thing is that all of them are very supportive of the Palestinian cause. And but what Israel is doing right now is, in fact, it's going to do everything to undermine them, because that's one of the things, that they are putting them in a position that they either will have to confront Israel or to shrink from it. And if they shrink from it, that completely then diminishes their, even right now, what's going to happen is that as they are seizing territory, so Jabhat al-Nusra is certainly not in a position to pick up a fight with a regional superpower, which is completely backed by the US, and which, it has been completely backed by Germany.
I'll just interrupt you there. You said that right now they're not in a position to retaliate. Doesn't mean that they don't want to, or they're just focusing on reconstruction of the country right now. Do you suggest that?
It's more like, because I think that they have a sense of, which battles to pick right now, because, it has been 13 years that they have finally managed to, what they have done is that they have finally managed to, overthrow this very brutal entrenched regime for 53 years. So right now, they just don't have that capacity. I mean, they cannot go up against, so I doubt that anybody in HTS, I mean, generally, if you see the opinion among Syrians, so everybody has seen what Israel did in Gaza. That was very much what Assad was doing to them. So nobody has any sympathy for that. So what's going to happen is that these people, they have a very good sense of, in fact, also there's a lot of fraternal relations between people. In fact, right now, one of the things that happened was when Sadnaya was released, so a large number of Palestinians were released there from the Qassam brigade. So there were people from Hamas who were actually being held by the Syrian regime. So which is kind of that's why these theories become ironic, because Assad was because he laid siege to the Yarmouk refugee camp for 5 years and inflicted the same thing that Israel is inflicting on Gazans. So there's no love for Israel, and certainly nobody is an instrument of Israel in this situation. In fact, if they had the capacity, they would have confronted Israel, but they don't.
Let's turn our attention now to the neighborhood. A Bangladesh court has rejected the bail plea of Chinmoy Krishnadas, a Hindu priest who has been arrested and jailed by the local authorities on charges of sedition. Local media reported that Chittagong Metropolitan Sessions Judge Muhammad Saiful Islam, who is on vacation, passed the order citing that the plea was rejected because Mr. Das did not have a lawyer's letter of attorney on his behalf. The petition, which will be heard on the 2nd of January next year, now states that Das, a monk who is suffering from various diseases, including diabetes and respiratory problems, has been arrested in a false and fabricated case. And with that, let's get you an update from Afghanistan now. Afghan Taliban's acting minister for refugees, Khalil Rahman Haqqani, has been killed in a blast in the country's capital, Kabul, his nephew has confirmed. But Khalil Haqqani became a minister in the Taliban's interim government after foreign forces withdrew from Afghanistan back in 2021. He was a senior leader of the Haqqani network, which is a militant faction blamed for major attacks during the 20-year war. Meanwhile, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has defended President Biden's decision to withdraw from Afghanistan while appearing before the Republican-led House Foreign Affairs Committee, which has long sought to question him over the deadly evacuation. Blinken declined to take the blame for decisions that were made leading up to the exit, explaining that actions were actually taken by the first Trump administration. It left the Biden administration in a weak position, and intelligence assessments expected Kabul to remain in the hands of the Afghan government. But Blinken's testimony came nearly 3 months after the committee voted along party lines to recommend that the nation's top diplomat be held in contempt of Congress amid a standoff over his appearance before the panel to discuss its investigation into the 2021 withdrawal. Well, in other crucial news, OPEC cut oil demand growth forecast for this year and next for a 5th straight month, making its deepest reduction to the 2024 outlook so far after agreeing to extend its supply curbs. The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries chopped projections for consumption growth in 2024 by 210,000 barrels a day to 1.6 million barrels a day, according to its monthly report. Now, the cartel has slashed projections by about 27% since July, as it belatedly recognizes the deteriorating market picture. And by the way, last week, the OPEC Plus alliance, led by Saudi Arabia and Russia, they agreed for a third time to delay plans to restart halted crude production, while also slowing the pace of increases once they do begin next year. But for more clarity on the matter, we have with us Peter Maguire joining us live from Sydney at the moment. Thanks so much, Peter, for making time for us on NDTV. What would you say the weaker outlook highlights? And do you believe China is expected to remain the main driver of global oil demand?
Well, good morning. I think a couple of things. Yes, I'll answer the first one. As far as consumption, China, they're really, I think all guns are blazing to try and get internal demand up across the whole fabric of the nation. And commodity consumption, I think, will increase. And naturally, you would expect that to include oil. So, and all forms of energy. So I think that that's the first part, and electricity consumption, so everything burning of fossil fuels. And where we're sitting at the moment, there just seems to be a little bit of a disconnect as far as global consumption and where there's price takers. And I think the whole initiatives with geopolitical concerns and all of that wrapped around are going to be a fascinating next couple of weeks as far as price discovery.
Well, forecasts, meanwhile, Peter, on the strength of demand growth in 2024 vary widely. Is this partly due to differences over demand from China and the pace of the world switch to cleaner fuels?
I think so. I think that, and this is the dislocation in the sense what OPEC's looking at. You've got the International Energy Agency, you've got the EIA. So everyone seems to have a different broomstick as far as how much growth you're going to see or contraction as far as across the landscape of global demand. We're still producing and still consuming around about 103 million barrels a day. But is it going to, we see a pullback as far as that global consumption, or does it actually, ramp up from here? And this is the great dilemma that I think every agency has, and what they're looking at as far as the big drivers being the likes of China and certainly India, and across, very much the landscape of Asia.
Right. Also, OPEC's outlook remains towards the top of industry estimates and actually contrasts with the International Energy Agency's far lower view. Any reasons why you think that's happening?
Yes, I think it comes to a point in time that, different viewing agencies or different interpretations as far as market contraction or market growth. They look at economic drivers, they look at GDP, they look at just consumption patterns, and they also take on board geopolitical concerns and price, all of these metrics that go into coming up with a forecast. And that's what you're doing. You're forecasting where growth is going to be or contraction. And that probably are some of the drivers that you look at. When you look at, like a consultancy agency, you ask for an appreciation of what's going on with price, and it's not unusual to see a divergence, and that's very much the part and parcel of how it is at the moment.
Meanwhile, you mentioned geopolitical tensions. Well, they have also kept oil's risk premium in play as traders actually await the formation of a new government in Syria after Bashar al-Assad has been ousted. Any challenges you see in the immediate future there?
I think so. I think it'll be interesting again how that is piecemeal together. Who's going to be in power? What's it going to look like as far as the fabric across Syria? And do you see other nations start to become more agitated? And I'm probably referring more to Iran. And that could be, I think, the powder keg that could change from a geopolitical standpoint, and price you could see an escalation in price if you were to see some sort of tension build. One needs to be considerate that oil prices are down nearly 17% since early July. So it's been and gasoline prices are back at 2021 levels in the United States. So prices are very trim at the moment, and it's not unusual to see tensions build, and that could well and truly be the stand out here.
Well, Peter, thanks so much for joining us with this update. Do stay on with us for the next update as well. The US government is actually weighing new harsher sanctions against Russia's lucrative oil trade, seeking to tighten the squeeze on the Kremlin's war machine just weeks before Donald Trump returns to the White House in January. But as per reports, details of the possible new measures were still being worked out. But Joe Biden's team was considering these restrictions that might target some Russian oil exports, according to people who've decided to speak on record. Peter's with us for a quick comment at the moment. Peter, this step now is something that Biden had long resisted over fears it could trigger a spike in energy costs. But with these reports emerging, yes, would you argue that the United States is now open to more aggressive action against Russia?
I think so. We've got to be appreciative as far as you're about 40 days out from the Trump administration from the inauguration on the 20th of January. So what happens over the next 6 weeks could be crucial, and President Biden is driving the engine at the moment. He's the captain. So yes, I wouldn't be surprised to see some form of sanctions coming into place. It could be aggressive. You've also got to look at the likes of Hungary, and where does Turkey look at all this as far as Russia energy and Russian gas. So the effect is going to, I think, create, again, a turbulence in the market. And how that's going to work across the energy complex is going to be very fascinating leading into Christmas.
Well, indeed, we will be keeping a close eye on all the developments. Thanks so much, Peter McGuire, as always, for joining us on NDTV World. The US is mulling new oil sanctions against Russia in order to weaken Putin and the war mechanism there. There are harsher sanctions that are being planned against Russia's lucrative oil trade. The US is seeking to tighten the squeeze as far as Kremlin's war machine is concerned. But as far as the details, the finer mechanism, that is still being worked out by Biden's administration just 40 days ahead of Trump returning to the White House. In other news, a United States intelligence assessment has concluded that Russia may use its new lethal experimental Oreshnik missile against Ukraine again in the coming days. This is what AP is reporting, citing a US official aware of the development. The missile is seen by US officials more as an attempt at intimidation than a game changer on the battlefield in Ukraine, according to the US official that's been cited in AP's report. In other news, India and the United Arab Emirates will carry out a comprehensive review of our strategic ties today, as External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar will host his counterpart from the Gulf nation, Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan, for wide-ranging talks. Mr. Al Nahyan, also the Deputy Prime Minister of UAE, is paying a 3-day visit to India to explore ways to further expand ties between our two countries. This is actually in a range of key areas, including trade as well as investment. And let's bring you an update from the United Kingdom now, where hundreds of tractors block streets in central London. The latest protest by farmers against the government after it ended an exemption from inheritance tax for agricultural families. The measure, dubbed the tractor tax by critics, was introduced by the government in the UK to boost funds to pay for strained public services. But farmers say it will destroy family farms and also reduce food production as far as the UK is concerned. Farmers in the UK say their income has been squeezed over years by Britain's competitive supermarket sector, cheap imports from abroad, and also subsidy cuts followed by Brexit. As always, news and updates continue right here on NDTV 24/7. We're slipping into a very short break for now. Don't go anywhere.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news is here.
I've been reporting on all issues big and small from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti is also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
We are able to maintain the democratic fabric and the democratic system.
I want to do something that can make a difference.
लगातार जनता की आवाज को सरकार तक पहुंचाने का काम मैं करता हूं.
I was a student up until very recently. I really want to work and do something for my people because they have given me this opportunity. They have elected me.
सोचा नहीं था कि राज्यसभा सांसद बनूंगी.
हमारा संविधान भारत की महान परंपरा, अखंड धारा, उस धारा की आधुनिक अभिव्यक्ति है.
Finally, the opposition and government to square off over the constitution in parliament.
पूरे देश में एक ही संविधान चले.
वो कहते हैं कि लाल रंग का संविधान राहुल गांधी दिखाता है.
Parliament all set for a fiery constitution debate.
बाबा साहब आम्बेडकर का संविधान भारत का संविधान.
इसके अंदर जो लिखा है उसकी हम रक्षा करते हैं, उसके लिए हम जान देने को तैयार हैं.
Constitution in crisis or scare for vote bank? What will prevail? Watch NDTV special coverage.
New day, new show, a new experience. Start your day with the news, not views. We bring you stories that matter and impact your lives. News that informs and keeps you ahead.
From Maximum City Mumbai
To the state of governance, Delhi, NDTV brings to you the best breakfast show. The breakfast show only on NDTV 24/7 every morning at 8 a.m.
NDTV proudly upholds its legacy of trust and credibility, according to the prestigious Reuters Institute's Digital News Report 2024.
Well, Tesla and SpaceX boss Elon Musk's net worth has surpassed $400 billion, according to the Bloomberg Billionaires Index, setting a new milestone for the world's richest person. The jump in wealth, the business news outlet reported, came after SpaceX and its investors agreed to purchase as much as $1.25 billion of insider shares in a transaction that valued the rocket and satellite company at about $350 billion. Now, Musk, you must note, has added about $218 billion to his net worth since the start of 2024. That's more than any other member of the group. Tesla shares, which make up the bulk of Musk's fortune, have gained 71% this year and closed on Wednesday at $424.77, which is their first record high since the year 2021. As far as expectations are concerned, expectations that Trump will streamline the rollout of self-driving cars and eliminate tax credits for electric vehicles that help the company's competitors has helped buoy Tesla's stock. Musk, by the way, is also slated to occupy a key role in the new administration with Donald Trump as co-head of the newly created Department of Government Efficiency, as we have reported. Now, while it will work outside the government, it does give him a bit of a strong stand as far as Washington is concerned, and also a direct line to the Oval Office. In staying with updates from the US, Luigi Mangione, the suspect in last week's killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson in broad daylight in broad daylight in New York City, faced an extradition hearing on murder charges, and Mangione was denied bail but contested extradition to New York. Pennsylvania now has 30 days to get a warrant from the governor for extradition, but Luigi was remanded to State Correctional Institution in Huntington, and authorities have said the extradition process to New York could now take as many as a month, so 30 days. But the 26-year-old Ivy League graduate from a prominent Maryland real estate family is fighting attempts to extradite him to New York so that he can face a murder charge in the Manhattan killing of Brian Thompson, who led the United States' largest medical insurance company. And finally, Saudi Arabia was officially confirmed by FIFA as host of the 2034 World Cup in men's soccer, giving the oil-rich kingdom its biggest prize yet for massive spending on global sports, driven by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The Saudi bid was the only candidate and was acclaimed by the applause of more than 200 FIFA member federations, and they took part remotely in an online meeting hosted in Zurich by the soccer body's president. But this decision was combined with approving the only candidate to host the 2030 World Cup. Spain, Portugal and Morocco will co-host in a 6-nation project in 104 games soon. As always, thank you so much for investing your time and watching this edition of The World 24/7. We'll keep tracking the latest updates for you. Do stay tuned.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news is here.
I've been reporting on all issues big and small from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti is also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
We are able to maintain the democratic fabric and the democratic system.
I want to do something that can make a difference.
लगातार जनता की आवाज को सरकार तक पहुंचाने का काम मैं करता हूं.
I was a student up until very recently. I really want to work and do something for my people because they have given me this opportunity. They have elected me.
सोचा नहीं था कि राज्यसभा सांसद बनूंगी.
हमारा संविधान भारत की महान परंपरा, अखंड धारा, उस धारा की आधुनिक अभिव्यक्ति है.
Finally, the opposition and government to square off over the constitution in parliament.
पूरे देश में एक ही संविधान चलेगा.
वो कहते हैं कि लाल रंग का संविधान राहुल गांधी दिखाता है.
Parliament all set for a fiery constitution debate.
बाबा साहब आम्बेडकर का संविधान भारत का संविधान.
इसके अंदर जो लिखा है उसकी हम रक्षा करते हैं, उसके लिए हम जान देने को तैयार हैं.
Constitution in crisis or scare for vote bank?
Hello everyone, a very good morning. Welcome to Breakfast Show. I'm Radhika Ramaswamy joining you from Mumbai studios. We also have Divya joining us from Delhi. Divya, Maharashtra portfolio suspense continues. Supreme Court to take up some important pleas on the contentious Places of Worship Act and a discussion on what is India's Anti-Laundering Act. All this and more coming up on the show.
That's right, and the suspense, of course, like you mentioned, as far as portfolio distribution in Maharashtra is concerned, and of course, what's really ailing the Anti-Laundering Act as far as India is concerned? Why is there such a low conviction rate? In the last 5 years, only 5% of the PMLA cases have gone to trial and been convicted. Trial is as far as trial cases are concerned, there are many cases, almost 28%, that haven't even made it to that trial date, in fact. So we'll cover all that and a lot more. First, let's get you the headlines. And the portfolio discussion and that challenge that's being faced by the BJP and Devendra Fadnavis. Devendra Fadnavis is here in the national capital, as is in fact Ajit Pawar as well. But Eknath Shinde has skipped that very crucial meeting that's going to be coming up at Amit Shah's residence today here in the national capital.